That's funny.
Okay, so let's see what kind of damage I can do here this time, or not do, as the case may be. I'll mention in passing that I have just started in reading Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, and I'm not sure how to take it so far. Just barely started. I'm probably not even 5 pages in yet. It reminds me, or rather more likely there are other things that I have read that are reminiscent of it, that have been influenced by it, such as Philip Jose Farmer's Riders of the Purple Wage, or I still haven't remembered to look the guy's name up and I don't have it memorized, and it's probably not John Sladek. The name of the book is The Muller-Fokker Effect, and Muller-Fokker being hyphenated. So if you happen to run across it, I recommend it. These have in turn influenced my own use of puns or of references or literary allusions and such off to the side in my own work, but this is so jabberwocked that I'm not sure that I'm making the kind of sense out of it that is there and intended, or that there is any such sense yet. And I have to say, it seems to me like it's an awfully thick book for finding out when one reaches the end that it has all been for the sake of listening to a voice, however mellifluous, speaking to itself a private language not meant to be understood by oneself. Understanding may come, or it may not, and I might say then that everyone who has ever trumpeted it as one of the great classics is full of hooey, as the case may be, which is kind of related, actually, to the things that I've been saying or trying to say about myth, because everyone who has ever said that Finnegan's Wake is one of the great classics, provided they're still alive, and hears me saying this, is probably going to feel a bit of a sting when I say it, because Finnegan's Wake, being one of the classics, is now part of their personal myth. Now that they have said it, whether they have said it to me directly or not, there is a connection or parallel, and the little voice in the back of my head says that it can't be both because a connection is an intersection, but then again, in one of my poems I describe myself as standing at the intersection of parallel lines, so that's all rather fitting. So there are some connections or parallels or both between the old racial or cultural myths that form the bases for tradition and religion and the personal myths that I am talking about. One of which is that what we admire in ourselves we worship in our gods, and likewise what we despise in ourselves we loathe in our devils. However right or wrong our perception might be as to what we should admire or despise. And as I referred to in the first part of this salon, problems arise when our admiration in word is supplanted by a show of loathing in deed, or vice versa, when a loathing in word is shown faults by deeds which emulate those which we say we despise, so that our hearts are seen to admire those actions in ourselves, if not so much in others, no matter what our lips might say. There is another connection, more tenuous but still there, regarding the origins of the myth and how it evolves. The myths of tradition or culture or religion are arguably informed much more from the inside of the corporate group and what it believes about itself than are the personal myth. But the connection comes about in part because there is an interrelation between one's personal myth and the myth of any corporate body of which one may be a member. And because these things don't just sit there alone, but I'll try to get to that later. I do have an image for that I'd like to share after I get through this part of what I'm saying. Our personal myths stem from, well, at least two. I'm going to list two for you, and one of them kind of subdivides from there also. Two basic types or points of origin. The part of it that stems from ourselves is largely pre-verbal. We might be able to verbalize it later if we really dig in and work with it and get our hands dirty, get excited about it, get enthusiastic about it, get into it and find out what it is and dig down to the bottom and never ever stop looking to see if maybe there's something more behind or deeper than whatever frame of reference you want to use there, but to see if maybe there's still something more than we have discovered so far. Because really, as long as you're still alive, there's always something more, because it grows here and withers there and transforms with every moment. The work is never complete. It may be sufficient for the time being as far as it goes, but the work is never complete. There's always something more to know about what's going on, because we keep going on, keep moving. What does not move, what does not adapt, what does not grow, dies. It's stuck back in the past somewhere. It's not here anymore. It's gone. So believe me, if you're still here, if you're still listening, then you are still moving and you are still adapting, and there is still more to know. The other point of the origin for the personal myth is external. You could call it points, plural, if you want to, but the point is that it is everything that is external to oneself. It's what we're told about ourselves. It's what we're told by others about themselves. It's what we're told about how we should view these others and how we should interact with them. What we're told about how we should feel about ourselves, in this case based on how these others feel about us, to shape ourselves and mold ourselves according to their opinions and desires. And this is so much the focus of our society now that it becomes weird and odd and strange and unorthodox and even heretical, even antisocial to perform any sort of introspection at all. To think about what I am outside of the infantile selfishness of what I want that I don't have yet. And so what happens is the myth is, we have the myth, and the myth is dynamic. It moves along, it goes, and it goes, and it goes. And if it helps, think of vector lines, or of a stream of water. And I'm trying to figure out how to, man, that is like over to the left of, way over to the left of where I would think center would be. This should be centered on me, and it doesn't seem to be really, but I'll just deal with it the best I can. And so somewhere along the way you have this thing going, and it encounters something, and it kind of goes over to the side, and it loops around, and it comes back again. And then there's stuff coming in from outside that feeds into it, and we feed out to the world, and it feeds into us. And there's this loop going on, and sometimes that's a good thing because that gives us a chance to observe what is going on, to observe our perceptions, and to form some kind of basis or some kind of criteria for determining how accurate our perception is, whether we're right, whether we're wrong, and if we are wrong, have a chance to correct ourselves and to know by how much do we need to offset to do so. The problem being, as it almost always is with any kind of feedback loop, if you don't have a stable, solid foundation, a strong bottom note, however you would put it, the chance for that loop to spiral erratically out of control is increased each time it goes around. And so part of the idea would be to feed as much different stuff into that loop as you can, provided that it's relevant, because what's not relevant is either indifferent or contributes to instability instead of to stability, and you end up with this runaway process going that you were trying to avoid. I don't know if this will help you any, but the image that I have is of a wheel or wheels, and some of them would be of varying sizes. And they are not all mounted on the same axis, but they might have, it might be like you draw a straight line here. Where is my freaking? There is my finger. You draw a straight line across, and the line might go through all the axes, or maybe they're all just wherever they are. Whatever imagery works for you on that, as far as this goes. But the point being that they're all hooked up to the same motor, or they all have motors of the same horsepower hooked up to them. So, but this does not necessarily make the speed of rotation constant, because, consider each of these wheels has a magnetic track around the rim. I'm trying to make a circle or semicircle or something here with my hand. It's not coming out very well. This would work so much better if I had somebody else holding on to this. That's alright. We'll deal with it. We'll think about it. We will understand it as best we are able. I'm watching you. Okay. But I digress. So, you have the same horsepower applied at the axis of each of these wheels, and they each have a magnetic media around the rim that reads off onto a head. Each one would have its own head, I suppose, or maybe the head bounces around from each. Again, that part of it would be customized by you for your own purposes and use. I'm going to try to hurry up with this now, because I'm almost at 13 and a half. I know I can do more than 15 now, but I'd rather not take up that much of your time with this one thing. So the idea I'm trying to get at is, the more information that you have in the loop, the larger the wheel that it's mounted on. So theoretically they're all the same width, they're all made out of the same material, so the more information you have, the heavier it is. Same horsepower, so divide the horsepower by the weight, and the heavier wheels turn slower. The idea being that the slower it turns, the better a chance you have to assimilate and process the information in the loop, so that if you're wrong, you are better able to correct your perception before that bit of information comes around again. And does that make any sense? It kind of does to me. I don't know if it does to you. I hope so. And that's about what I have for right now. And it's really not about the wheels. It's about the information on them. It's about how we process it. It's about the myth. Thank you for listening if you were listening. Thank you for not listening if you weren't. You are still loved, but you're never going to know that if you didn't listen, are you?